Welcome again if you're worshiping us for the first time or 724th time. I just calculated 14 years into 52 Sundays or anywhere in between. Welcome to Loft and thank you for worshiping with us. And my name is Sandeep and I'm married to my beautiful wife Lauren and we have a 1-year-old son. His name is Zeke and one of my favorite things to do these days is to spend time with him as much as I can. And I love playing with him, teaching him some new fun things. He knows to say no, and that's his new and favorite thing. So everything that we ask him, he says no. And I also have other hobbies where I get to play pickleball with some of my friends here that are here worshiping with us as well. And I work in technology, so technology is one of my hobbies, but also my work. And it's not the same for a lot of people that work in tech. They don't really like to be there. And technology has been evolving a lot, and cryptocurrency, know it or not, it started way back before 2014. And right now, if some of you are investing in Bitcoin, it has reached its peak last week, and that's an exciting thing for a lot of people. But cryptocurrency is like a digital currency. It's like the money that we use, like the dollars, but it's on a digital platform. So people cannot tamper with it, and a lot of people have to agree to how the value changes. And I'm so passionate about learning this technology, but I didn't get to do a lot of work with it. But still, I really enjoyed learning about it. So back in 2020, there was a trend where a lot of people were looking into the cryptocurrency and they wanted to invest, they want to build their wealth. And there's a guy called Globby. He became a YouTube sensation overnight because he invested all of his savings, all of his credit cards maxed out. He borrowed money from his friends and however he can, because he knows the cryptocurrency will peak and he will have a lot of money and then he can retire. In 1 week, the surprise is that he made $2 million and he became a YouTube sensation. So he was all around the internet and the famous investors were recommending to him like, hey, sell all the crypto that you have right now because it's reaching its peak and you can retire early and have a financial independent life, the so-called the FIRE movement that a lot of young people chase after. But this guy, he thought to himself, well, if I sell it now, what if I lose on the opportunity of making it even bigger? 2 million might not be enough for me, I need even more. But sadly, in the turn of events, he lost everything that he had in just overnight, and he went into debt. And he was a regular person who hit its peak, but it was so temporary that he lost everything that he had. The temporary chase that have ended in disappointment. So today we'll be discussing about Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 to 24. And we'll discuss this in 3 different parts. The first one we'll discuss about how, what kinds of treasure there are. And the second, we will look at the attitude towards a treasure. And third, we will look at which place should we invest and maximize our ROI. ROI means return on investment. So let's turn our Bibles to Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. I'm reading it from NET version. That's my favorite version. And it says, "Do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth, where moths and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moths nor rust destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So the main point today that we will discuss is that your heart will be anchored where you invest your treasure. I just want to repeat that again, that your heart will be anchored where you invest your treasure. So the earthly treasure, in this passage, he talks about two different kinds of treasure. One treasure is the earthly treasure, and the other is the heavenly treasure. The earthly treasure Jesus talks in Matthew 6 is not about just money or possessions or comfort. It's more than that. People identify with that and find security in it. They put their life into it, earning for it. In Jesus' time, living under the Roman Empire, having things like wealth or social status is a sign of a shield for them to protect against the Roman Empire's oppression. And much like today, today's prosperity gospel, back then people used to think that wealth is a sign of God's blessing. Well, wealth belongs to God, yes, but they put their identity in it and they saw it as a sign of God's blessing. In today's modern terms, #blessed. And we sometimes think about it that way too. Like, when we have things that we want or things that we think that we deserve to have, and we think that we are blessed. Sometimes it comes very simply in a conversation, I'm blessed with this thing. But only if you find our identity, it becomes our treasure. And today in our capitalistic culture, we see wealth more and more as a blessing, as a God's blessing. And but this passage reminds us that this kind of treasure will not last, and it will fade away too quickly, and it will not follow us into eternity. So when I was younger, as a boy, growing up in school, one of my favorite things where I found my identity is in cricket. Cricket was a religion in India. I grew up in India, and cricket was my religion, and cricket bat was my religion. These days, I think pickleball might be mine, but I don't get to. Cricket was my religion, and day in and day out, I used to spend my time playing cricket. And if I was picked for a certain team, play for my school small team, I would be so happy to open the batting for them, and I'm thrilled. I found my identity in it. Back then, it was a religion. As I grew older, my identity slowly changed. I got a car when I started working for a little bit, and it was not about point A to point B. For me, it was more about how I would identify my car as my wealth, as my treasure. And I would keep it really clean. I would take it to wash every weekend. And I would also used to park very far so that I don't get the door dings, And Lauren would say, I'm still that way sometimes. And I try to keep my car really clean because that became a part of my identity. But as I became a dad over time, and my identity started growing in my family, and I really want to take care of my family and take care of Lauren and Zeke. So I used to work hard to make sure that we would not fall back on anything, and we would make sure that we are paying for the things that we wanted to get. And somehow the identity was my job. And 2 years ago, my company laid off a bunch of people, and I lost my job. And slowly, my heart came crashing down. There were nights that I couldn't sleep. I was anxious. I was preparing my resume for the next job, but there was a lot of time that I took that I had to decompress and prepare for the next phase. And slowly, without knowing, I put my identity in my job, and I drifted from what I held close to me to be not Jesus, but my job and what it provided for me. My job is not just 9 to 5. Like I said, I love technology. It was more about where I found my identity and my security in. So I don't want to lose it. But during that time, God reminded me that it's not about the opportunities out there. It's not about my own skills and my own strength, but it is His providence that would keep us and my family to go through life. And during that time, God reminded me that He is the Jehovah Jireh, and He is the provider, and He will take care of us through the ups and downs in our life. Sometimes, like me, we shift our trust from God to things intentionally or unintentionally. We notice or not, we drift, pulled away by the subtle currents of this life, demands of our life, demands of the culture, expectations from peers, expectations from parents, for people who are going into colleges, followers on social media, the blue check marks, and you need to keep up with that. And our hearts slowly get anchored in it. And that's a danger. And that's not the treasure that Jesus wants us to put our hope in. Jesus tells this parable in Luke chapter 12, verse 16 to 21. He talks about a man whose fields have produced a lot. And he saved up for himself. His barns were full. And he thinks to himself, well, I have everything that I need. So life, do the FIRE moment, sit back, you're financially independent, you can retire early. And it says, but the man thinks to himself that he could do that. But Jesus says, how sad, you fool, this very night, if your life will be demanded from you, then who will get all that you prepared for yourself? When we watch here, Jesus is clearly not saying that, oh, I'm going to curse all the wealth that you have. Jesus is the one who is the giver of wealth. But Jesus is saying that your heart has put trust in something that's not me. And your heart has been overcome by the treasure of this world. Well, that's the treasure of this. That's what the treasure of this world will do to us. And now that we talked about what earthly treasure does, let's dive into what heavenly treasure is. To understand this, let's understand this from another parable of the rich young man. So a rich young man comes to Jesus and he says he has everything right in his life. He has followed Jesus, followed all the law that he had to follow. And he says, what must I gain to have eternal life? And he has the right question too. And he has the right questions and everything, but his intention was something far from what is right. And he says, when Jesus starts naming one commandment after another, he says, well, I have done that. I have prayed. I have done this. I have done that. But Jesus goes a little deeper and he asks for a little bit more. He says, sell what you possess and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. I just want to emphasize this verse again. He says, sell what you possess, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and then come follow me. There are three things that he's saying here. Sell what you possess, give to the poor. And second thing he says is, you will have treasure in heaven. And the last one he says, come follow me. So imagine this man's face. He probably is not happy. He came with an expectation of, oh, Jesus is going to tell me something, one more thing that I can mark off. And, I will be rich in heaven as well, and I will have eternity. But Jesus was asking a little more from him. If we translate that to today's modern terms, if Jesus is saying the same thing to us, I would be like, okay, Jesus, who is going to take care of me and my family? Who's going to pay for the bills? Will I have a Starbucks budget? Because I at least need one Starbucks by the end of the week. Will I even have a Wi-Fi, reliable Wi-Fi? Will I be able to afford it to stream my football game? Or it could be well, I'm about 35. I need a comfortable mattress. I cannot do without this. I'm afraid that I need to sleep on the floor, and my back doesn't agree with it. Well, this is not a joke for the young man either. It was a hard call to follow Jesus. And it's very hard for him to leave everything that he had to follow him. Well, I'm not saying that go sell everything that you have. But this is what Jesus is saying, that your intention to put your trust in what you have put in, it's the wrong place. But Jesus, when we follow, even if Jesus has asked you to do that, he is the one who promises to take care of us. And when we follow Jesus with our heart, when he has called us, when he has saved us, when we follow Jesus with our heart, he is going to reward everything that we have done for him. But it's also not about doing. It's not about giving everything that we have and be poor. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that the things that we have here are so temporal that knowing Jesus is far more greater and following Jesus is far more greater. And Paul captures this in Acts 20:24 in a very perfect way. He says, I do not account my life of any value, nor as precious to myself, if only I finish my course. Paul, what he's saying here is that compared to eternity, knowing Jesus and following him diminishes all the earthly credits, all the earthly treasure, all the earthly value that I think I have identity in will diminish. And knowing Jesus and following him is far more greater in value. Well, Jesus is calling each of us to follow him daily and follow him faithfully. Sometimes, many times, it looks like depending on him when things go right and even when things go wrong, and trusting him when we have and trusting him when we have not. And when we do that, we are shifting our gears and we are responding to where we put our trust in and where we put our treasure in. Well, that is how eternal treasure looks like. Now that we talked about two different kinds of treasures, we'll also talk about two different kinds of attitudes towards the treasure. Reading from Matthew chapter 6, again, verses 22 and 23. So I want to read these verses in terms of a Jewish listener, because these verses are talking about something different, but they're still connected to what we're talking about. So reading it from a Jewish perspective again, it says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, meaning that you're a generous person, your whole body will be full of light, which means that your life will be filled with joy. But if your eye is bad, which means you're a greedy person or thinks about yourself more than being generous, you'll be full of darkness. And if then light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? Actually, the last phrase hits the point really strong. It says that if then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? Which means that if you think you're a generous person, but you only think about yourself, then it's really a dark place. Well, talking about greed in itself is self-centered and it's very self-deceptive. It always wants more of itself and it's never content. Jesus is giving us a strong warning here that greed is self-deceptive, and it says that you're living in light, but you're actually living in darkness and you would not even realize that. Sadly, this is a really human condition, and a lot of people go through this when we view our resources. And as a human, it's a condition that even I and us have to go through when we have to check our own hearts. We often think greed is only for the rich people because they want more, but we never look at ourselves. But Jesus doesn't say that. He shows us that it's a human problem and each of us are subject to it. That's the danger of greed. Tim Keller, in one of his sermons, talking about greed, he says that He has seen people in his years of experience that people have come to him confessing of adultery, confessing of theft, confessing of different kinds of things, but no one has ever come to him saying that they're greedy. Because greed in itself, as Jesus is saying, is self-deceptive. It blinds itself to us, and we would not even realize that. So sometimes greed can also, to do a heart check, it can sound something like this. Lauren and I, we discuss about how many earphones or headphones we have at our home. But we still think about, okay, what shall I get for him or for her for the next birthday? And when we open Amazon, the first thing that shows up is headphones. And now we want a different headphones for vacation. Now I want a different headphones when I play music. Or when I want Bluetooth headphones, the noise cancellation ones, a really good one, not the one that, I want to lose, but I don't want to share it with anyone else. That's the one that I want. And sometimes greed can sound like responsibility. It sounds like, well, I'm being wise and I'm saving money for my retirement or for my future. Over time, we oversave and delay our generosity, saying that we are being responsible. But also sometimes we say, okay, when I hit a certain financial goal, I'm going to give more. But we might or might not end up doing that. And sometimes it looks like a simple Amazon package that keeps arriving at the door every day probably, or every week, you never know. But we cannot stop that buy now button. It's so attractive to us. Sometimes it just looks like I just want the best for my family, and we buy things, and sometimes we even call it a blessing. Well, I'm not trying to make you guilty. I'm not trying to point anything at you, but these are not bad intentions of doing some things that are right. But if you're not careful, there's a subtle, convenient ways that we trust ourselves and trust our own wealth and trust our own ability to spend what we have for our own security and for our own comfort. And it replaces how God wants to use the resources that He has given us. Greed is just a symptom of misplaced trust. We cling to the heart. Greed clings, or we cling to the things that are earthly and the desires of the earth, and resist what Jesus wants us, or even we don't even ask what God wants to do with the resources that He has given us. So we kind of settle with, okay, I know the best for myself, and I do what I can do. Well, on the contrary, a good eye represents a person that is generous and compassionate and willing to share the resources that they were given instead of filling their own lives with themselves. Jesus calls us to give more of what we have been given already, because every time we give and we depend on God and ask Him how He wants us to use our resources, we are investing into eternal treasure. We are shifting our focus from what we identify ourselves in this earth with the treasure or the resources that we have to eternal treasure. Well, I saw this, and I still see this lived out through a good friend of mine here in Dallas. He doesn't have much, but he gives generously all that he has been given. A good and hard life stories, his time, his money, his simple homemade meals to the friends around him, and he would invite people over to his place. And sometimes he gives his joyful but also grumpy presents. He listens to them deeply. He asks good questions. He makes them feel at home, and he invites them not just into his home, but in a way sharing his space. And over time, these friends I've seen that he made, who are complete strangers when they walked in, over time, they ask questions. Hey, why are you doing this? Why are you inviting us? And they would see what he's doing and how he's giving. And they would ask questions, and I've seen people turn to Jesus and listen to his stories, and they walk with Jesus over time. My friend isn't flashy, he isn't wealthy, but he lives generously what he has been given because he believes that Jesus has given everything that he had and has, and he will take care of him no matter what happens to his job, no matter how he gets his next meal from. He might not have much here on this earth, but his eternal treasure is great, I believe. And he's a great example for me. And at Loft, we hear this day in and day out. Week in and week out. Sam keeps saying this. I'm rephrasing Sam, so I had to read up what he's saying. We are not obligated to give. We give because we already have been given more than we deserve. We give. Our giving is not a transaction, it's worship. It's not God, here is $10. Give me $100 back. It's saying, Jesus, you gave everything for me, so I give back in trust and joy. We are reminded of this week in and week out because it's not about just a Sunday giving. It's about giving our life to Jesus and following him daily, giving our talents, our resources, and investing it in his eternal kingdom. Well, those are the two different kinds of attitudes towards treasure. One is greed, which looks for ourselves, and wants more of it, and is never satisfying. And the other is with generosity, that gives that Jesus, that the promise that Jesus is going to take care of us and our dependence on him. And finally, we go into the last verse, which is Matthew chapter 6:24. Jesus says, you cannot serve two masters. Either you will despise one and love the other, or you love the other, but you cannot serve both God and money. Well, how we have discussed about money, I want to reemphasize that money is here, it's not about talking about how much you have, but it's where your identity is and where you put your trust in when things go bad. One master in this is the treasure on this earth that promises comfort, that promises control, that promises security, and often brings us stress, often brings us pride, often brings us fear of not even wanting to talk about it. It pulls our heart towards chasing more of it, promising more safety and more status, but never delivering on it. And the other is Jesus, who offers something the world never promises. And he gives us peace beyond understanding. He gives us contentment that satisfies our soul. And he gives us confidence to live this life no matter what happens with our life. He gives us confidence to live because he promises eternity. He calls us to trust him fully and follow him daily. And here Jesus is not saying that, you can have both, but he's saying you cannot follow two masters. You cannot put your identity in your earthly treasures and heavenly treasure, because when Jesus is calling us to follow him, a lot of times it will cost us, and it costs us in a way that costs the young man to say, okay, well, it's going too far. I might have to step back. It might cost us. But the promise, Jesus doesn't say, Jesus is not saying that he will leave us. When we follow him, when we trust him daily, he's going to take care of us. But if we try to do both, we have divided loyalty. We have constant stress, and we will eventually burn out. And if we are trying to follow both, we will either be pretending and not being true to surrendering to Jesus. Well, Jesus' call is an invitation to live in confidence, knowing that He will provide and He will protect and He will take care of us through every situation in our life. So His promise is greater. If Jesus, the one who knows the future, one who knows eternity, has to knock on your door, and He's the greatest investment advisor, this is what He has to say. And He's saying that do not put your trust in the things of this world, and do not take pride in it, because they're all going to perish and they're all going to crash. But He's promising something that's far more greater. But He's calling us to know Him, to follow Him, to anchor our hearts in Him, and to give generously what we have been given, because He's the one that in the end owns everything, and that He will take care of us. And today, I invite you all to be rich, not in the terms of this world, but in terms of heaven, in heavenly treasure. And let your heart, your time, your resources, your treasure, your strengths, your weaknesses be used for God. And that one day when we see Him, when we use our resources towards Him and give Him glory, we see all the earthly identity and treasure and everything will diminish, and His glory will surpass everything, and that we'll be worshiping Him in His presence. Let's close our time today in prayer and surrender. Jesus, knowing You is our greatest treasure, and sometimes we drift away with the current of this world, with the demands of our life, and we sometimes take identity and put our trust in the things of this world. But help us to surrender our hearts to You, knowing that You are going to provide, You're going to take care, no matter how our life turns to either up or down, You're going to provide for us. And Father, we just want to commit our lives to You and to Your glory. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name.